This webinar series is helping to support the launch of the new Colorado Cancer Plan, and specifically Goal 2 of the Cancer Plan, increased prevalence of healthy behaviors. Today, we'll begin exploring food access in urban settings with our esteemed panelists from 3 prominent organizations that are leaders in our state, whom will be introduced shortly. Our objectives for today are to understand barriers and solutions to increase access to urban food systems, and to understand how access to food systems impacts cancer prevention, treatment, and survivorship. And I'm gonna let our experts talk about food access, but before we get into that, I know that the term built environment might be new for some, so I wanted to do a quick level set on that. So built environment are the spaces and places where we live, work, and play every day. It's the infrastructure that you see around you. So think parks and trails, the sidewalks, or maybe not sidewalks in your neighborhoods. And it really determines about 80% of our ability to be healthy. It influences a lot of different things in our environment, including air quality and substance use, our diet and physical activity. And specifically, there are impacts on cancer, breast cancer screening and lung cancer, and overall cancer risk. Communities with robust built environment makes it easy for people to be physically active and eat healthy, and avoid some of the things that can cause cancer risk. And we also know that built environments that enhance health are not equitably distributed in our communities. So today, we are going to be hearing about food access in urban environments from Brandy Brogan at Project Angel Heart, Nyambi Leoden at Metro Caring, and Wendy Smitek and Doug Woolley from Food and Communities. And I'm going to turn it over to Janice to introduce all of our panelists. Janice?
All right, got myself unmuted, so I'm good to go. All right, everyone, I have the fortune of introducing this wonderfully experienced and involved members of our community that are really interested in this topic and can share more of their wisdom and expertise with us today. Representing Project Angel Heart, Brandy Brogan joined Project Angel Heart in December 2002. She's worked in every department at this organization, including the kitchen as the special diet chef. Currently, Brandy directs the staff and daily operations of the Client Services Department, oversees their Client Services Advisory Council, and manages community outreach. Brandy is an active member of the Colorado Cancer Coalition and the Survivorship and Palliative Care Task Force. She studied at New Mexico Highlands University School of Social Work and Luna Vocational Technical Institute. Prior to working at Project Angel Heart, she was the head chef at Pandaray Golf Resort in New Mexico and also worked as a sign language interpreter for One World Translation. Representing Food in Communities program as a grantee of the Cancer Cardiovascular and Pulmonary Disease Program within CDPHE, Wendy Smitek has a bachelor's degree in philosophy from the University of Colorado at Denver. She works for the Denver Department of Public Health and Environment as a food connector with the Food in Communities team. She has also previously owned a home health care agency and a medical transcription company. Overall, she has held diverse roles within the health, nonprofit, travel, and construction industries, and does this all through the lens of assisting marginalized populations. On a personal side, Wendy is married with 5 adult children ranging in ages from 40 to 23, with her youngest in the 2nd year of medical school. And her 10th grandchild is scheduled to arrive in January. Congratulations. When not globetrotting, she enjoys gardening, camping, and bike riding. She is also a vegetarian foodie in search of creating the best acai bowl. Co-chair of the Denver Sustainable Food Policy Council is Doug Woolley. He describes himself as a professional volunteer and mischief maker. I love that. He loves to garden as it feeds his soul. Over the years, Doug has learned that gardening and creating art are the two spaces and places where he can deal and heal. As Doug has healed from a variety or various challenges related to living with spina bifida, he has also learned, advocated, and modeled that when the most vulnerable persons in our community are provided the space and place at the table to advocate, lead, and create the changes needed to address the challenges, then we have a diverse, healthy, and supported community. Over the past several years, Doug has focused his attention on food and food insecurity with this frame of thought. This has allowed him the opportunities to serve as co-chair of the Denver Sustainable Food Policy Council, serve on the Nourish Colorado Double Up Advisory Committee, facilitator for food in communities, and served as a garden leader for 2 gardens. One of the gardens is located at the Projectbased apartment complex where Doug lives. The community-based approach has built a garden club at the apartment complex that has been able to provide 100 pounds of organically grown produce to Doug's neighbors in 2021. That's awesome. Representing Metro Caring is Nyambe Layden. She is the senior manager of the food sovereignty at Metro Caring. She supports their nutrition, food access, and urban agricultural teams. Nyambe has a rich and diverse educational background, beginning with a degree in interior design for pre-architecture from Florida State University. And she later studied massage therapy and attained a permaculture certification, and most recently completed trainings in herbal medicine and herbal management for acute viral infections, as well as a Harvard Business School online leadership principles course. She brings 13 years of hands-on food systems experience from urban organic farming to education and grassroots community building. Her work and lived experiences have created a strong sense of land stewardship and a thoughtfulness about the relationship between humans, the land that sustains us, and the systems that impact both. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Janice. I can't wait to hear from all of our wonderful panelists today. We are going to turn it over to Brandy at Project Angel Heart to hear about how they're approaching food as medicine.
Perfect, thank you. So I am the Director of Client Services at Project Angel Heart, and I want to tell you a little bit about Project Angel Heart for those of you that don't know about us, and then how we address food insecurity in urban areas and built environments. Next slide. So our vision is a time when all Coloradans living with severe illness have access to nutritious food that supports their health and well-being. This is really important to us. We know that medically tailored meals can provide lower healthcare costs, reduce readmission rates, and improve overall health and well-being of individuals. So we provide medically tailored meals to individuals who have severe illnesses. Next page. So we started in 1991, and all of our meals are made from scratch every day by professional chefs. And we provide meals in a diverse different cultures and different cuisines. We have no age or income restrictions, and our meals are delivered right to an individual's home. Next slide. So being part of the environment and being environmentally friendly, we'd like to make sure that the products we're using are also provided by either local vendors or they're all sustainably raised or harvested. So all of our beef products are antibiotic free. Our fish is all provided by Seattle Fish Company, and it's all sustainably raised and harvested. We have our own greenhouse on site and garden beds where we grow our own herbs, Swiss chard, tomatoes, and extra things like that. We always try to source with local vendors when available. So Colorado Native, Medigold, and Italco are a few of the companies that we work with. And as I said, everything is made from scratch every day. Next slide. So who we serve. So our meals are available for anyone living with a severe illness who has problems getting adequate nutrition on their own. And all of our meals are medically tailored. So we provide a variety of diets. There are 18 to 20 different variations of every meal that is provided. And as I said, there are no age or income factors. So therefore, we're accepting all levels of income and all ages, providing more equity across the board. We provide all of our meals free of charge to our clients. Last year, we provided meals to just over 4,000 Coloradans and provided 550,000 meals. Next slide. So today I'm going to focus on cancer because that's obviously what we're working with. So we provide specific nutrition guidance for different types of cancer, and we have a dietitian on staff who provides medical nutrition therapy and is able to guide cancer patients through the difficult time while we provide the most nutritious and cancer appropriate meals for them. Next slide. So we really depend on volunteers. We could not do what we do without our volunteers. So every volunteer opportunity that we have is listed on our website. We have volunteers who work in our kitchen, work in our gardens, help answer phones, help file. We also have volunteers who deliver all of our meals around the Denver metro area for free. They use their own cars, gas, and time. And our volunteer hours have averaged about 31 full-time staff. So we really could not do what we do without our volunteers. Next slide. So one of the things that we want to be able to do is provide healthy meals in urban areas. So we have a few great ideas where we've been able to do that. We are shipping statewide for healthcare contracts, and we've actually been able to serve 49% of the Colorado counties. So we're able to serve those underserved areas out in Grand Junction and in the southeastern part of the state as well. That has been exceptionally exciting for us because we've been able to provide meals and allow clients to stay in their homes when they're ill and unable to properly cook and take care of themselves. We also deliver in the Denver metro area, Boulder, and Colorado Springs by volunteers. And statewide, we will ship through FedEx. So that is how we're able to do that. Next slide. So we're all about reducing, reusing, recycling, and composting. We have a number of recycling opportunities that go on at our agency, even ones that have nothing to do with food. So we recycle batteries, toothpaste, toothbrushes, light bulbs, corks, I'm sorry. We do electronic recycling where we encourage volunteers to bring in their old electronics. We recycle all of our gloves that are utilized. And then even the tops to carrots, the tops to leeks, things like that, we use for stock, and then we compost those. And then what we're able to compost, we can also utilize in our gardens. So we try to utilize everything to its fullest. Next slide. This is what a delivery looks like, minus the styrofoam. We are environmentally friendly, and that is an old picture. So every one of our trays are recyclable. All of our bags are recyclable, and we'll even take the plastic back and recycle that. So just know that we do care about the environment and are trying to do our part there as well. Next slide. To apply for meals, our application's on our website, or somebody can reach out to us. We're on a time limit, so you probably won't have time to jot this down, but this will be sent out after the meeting, and you can reach out and contact me if you have questions about how somebody qualifies for our program. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandy. And don't worry, everybody, we're going to be getting into the good stuff once we understand who we're hearing from today. So next up is Food and Communities with Wendy and Doug.
Thank you, Ian. And thank you, Brandy. What an amazing organization. Glad to see the work that you're doing. Though our program, Food and Communities, is not specific to cancer patients, our work does address the root causes of health disparities for people who are more prone to getting cancer in the first place. So we're funded through the state of Colorado, the Cancer, Cardiovascular, and Chronic Pulmonary Disease Department. And I am honored to have Adriana Botik, who is my friend, but also our program officer. And we also serve together, Doug, myself, and Adriana serve on the Denver Sustainable Food Policy Council. Next slide. So as we look at food and communities in our overview, We look to address policies and procedures that increase access to healthy, affordable, and culturally relevant foods. Those policies and procedures can be legislative. For instance, if I were to champion a specific one that's close to my heart right now, it would be the online availability of SNAP participants versus WIC. So if you were a SNAP participant right now, you could go online, you could order your food and have it delivered to you. WIC, which is women, infant, and children, you cannot, you have to show up in person. So that would be a policy that I would love to change that could affect access to healthy, affordable, and culturally relevant food. So that's a legislative policy that could be changed. Or it could be specific to an organization, like funding pilot projects or supporting organizations that just need to build capacity so that they can be able to provide more access. And so I think we can all understand what access to food looks like. We can understand in our own terms what healthy food may look like and even affordable. But I would like to highlight why we think culturally relevant foods is important. So in my bio, you heard that I'm a vegetarian. If I found myself in need of support in the area of food, if someone actually gave me a pork chop, as hungry as I might be, I would not eat that. And so in providing me something that's not culturally relevant for who I am, you have wasted soil, water, packaging, distribution, etc. Another example, I talked about being a globetrotter. I've been to China. If I found myself in China and hungry and someone gave me the ingredients that are relevant in a Chinese culture, I wouldn't know what the ingredients necessarily were. I wouldn't know how to prepare them. I wouldn't even know recipes for dishes. So when we speak of culturally relevant, it gives people dignity to eat the food that they would normally eat. So in our work, we also look at culturally relevant food. So next slide. So if we were to look at our focus areas, they are, you'll see the blue dots, but to be specific, we're doing Sheridan, West Colfax, and East Colfax. And East Colfax goes from Colorado Boulevard and Colfax to Yosemite, where our neighbor organization, Tri-County Health, picks it up at Yosemite and to 225. So the three partnerships are Denver, Jeffco, and Tri-County Health. I'm sharing my time with Doug, and he has more specific information. So I want to hand it over to Doug Woolley.
Thank you, Wendy. Yeah, the specific information. Ooh, that's interesting. I will say that thank you, folks. Sorry, I'm having a bit of a rough day with spina bifida. We didn't know about that in the bio, so cooler weather makes it difficult. And that also means when we're talking about our security and food and the area in West Colfax area, we're getting that opportunity to start to address the sidewalks and the grocery stores or lack of grocery stores in the area based on what the population of the community is. And that is another big piece that when we start to talk about cancers and things like that, what is the population we're looking at and how do we support behaviors and pieces in there? Because one of the things we tend to do is we tend to address the symptom, but we forget to ask the why. What's the root cause of? And so one of the nice things and valuable things that Food and Communities has been able to do with the West Colfax area that I'm aware of is start to really talk to community and engage with community. And I know the other ones are doing that, but we also are so far apart that sometimes we don't get to share all the information together. But what are the things that the community members who are part of community are already needing, and how do we support that? And then putting the very things, because when we talk about barriers and disparities and challenges, we know one of the biggest challenges is the resource to get that. And what do those resources look like? Sometimes it's the financial, but sometimes it might be the people too. How do we keep the people engaged, and who within the community makes that happen? So with Food and Communities in our area, we've been able to start to identify those different resources. Yes, looking into financial, but who in the community has the capacity to help support keeping the community healthy, so that we can start to avoid some of these very challenging and very deadly diseases that we are talking about. I'm gonna leave it there and move forward, please.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you, Doug. Let me grab my share again. Let's see. Thanks, Doug. And now we are going to turn it over to Nyambe Ladan.
Thank you. My name is Nyambe Ladan, and so I work at Metro Caring. I started working here in January, but definitely am not new to food systems work in Denver and surrounding areas. Next slide, please. So Metro Caring has been around since 1974. It was started by churches, and the idea was to be an emergency food entity. And so it's a long time coming that we've realized, of course, that emergency was meant to just be for a short period of time. But as we know, systems that are in place, the need for food is still exists. And so in the last 3 years, we've been looking at a strategic plan that looks at some of the root causes and really more intentional approach to food access and food apartheid. Next slide, please. So where we are going in that analysis, we've added new programs to include nutrition education, urban agriculture, economic development, community organizing, and activation. So getting folks involved on every level of what we're doing at Metro Caring, from being on our board to informing the programming that we create here, facilitating their own cooking clubs and classes that meet the cultural needs and desires of our community, being able to garden on the land that we do have available, and economic development opportunities for entrepreneurship as it relates to food businesses. On site, we do have a kitchen space that several people have been able to use to get their businesses off the ground. And then our community organizing and activation team and civic engagement, really getting folks involved in making choices and decisions that can impact their overall life in our city here in Denver specifically. So yeah, we are approaching from different prongs, and it's just really fun to work together as these different teams. Next slide, please. Another direction we are going is internally. So understanding that racism affects the social determinants of health, specifically looking at where people live based on their cultural background and what is accessible. So knowing that in addition to there not being grocery stores, there also is usually not a tree canopy. So health being affected from many different dimensions. And so of course, first we have to do internal work as an organization. So we actually are in the midst of an equity audit. We are getting toward the end of that, looking at recommendations and then devising a tool that we will use internally. And then the next step is to really look at how we are doing in our equity out externally. Next slide, please. Another focus is affordable housing. So this is a picture of our building. We're located on 18th and Downing. And so next door to us, this is an old picture because next door to us, if you can look to the left first picture, there's really nothing there. That is no longer the case. There now is a 8-story building next, 2 of them next door to us. And so we are thinking, why not us then? Why not us build up and be able to offer affordable housing, as that is another huge impact on people's budget for food. Next slide, please. Focus number 3 is a community food utility. So we are still in the process finishing up analysis of that and trying to answer some questions. So this would mean working together. So a Denver community food utility would look like a new public utility with the mission to ensure that nutritious, quality, and culturally connected foods are accessible to all Denver residents to start. Next slide, please. This is a slide of our core values. I won't go deep into them because you will receive these, but our first is pursue equity. Our next is to champion the mission. Our third is to rise together. So being very intentional in the ways that we do things with our community and decision-making and getting feedback and how we are impacting. Of course, finding the joy. Next slide, please. Owning it, so taking responsibility for ourselves in this work and beyond, being brave and thinking outside of the box. Next slide, please. Social determinants and food insecurity impacts. Of course, as we know, if folks don't have access to healthy food, they are going to suffer from negative health outcomes.
So it's very important that we as a community working together in all of these different realms, talk to one another, have webinars such as this so we can talk about the work we're doing and see where the connections lie. So I'm very excited to connect with all of you following this webinar. Next slide, please. And our 3 uniques here at Metro Caring, nutritious food changes everything. We know this. So from health to education, increasing standards of living, food is at the center of all that we're doing. We work with our community, not for, and tackling hunger at its root. Again, knowing that racism, lack of access to housing, thriving wage, all of those things impact food access. Next slide, please. This is another way of how we approach our work, just looking into it more, strengths-based assessment of our communities. So we know there are leaders that already exist there, using community-led ideas to solve the problems, and using intentional leadership development so that we are supporting our community to do what they already have the skills to do. Next slide, please. And then what's the difference? So we have several different teams here. Community development, I know this font is super tiny, but community development works very closely with communities to identify those leaders, work in entrepreneurship and just wealth building overall. Next slide, please. Again, we have our community activation team, as I mentioned, working in policy legislation, civic engagement, and education with our communities. Next slide, please. And food sovereignty team. So that is my team. Food access, nutrition, and urban agriculture makes up this team. And so we are working collectively together to focus on our procurement, making sure we're purchasing locally, supporting local farmers and local economy, and also listening to the voices of our community to see how we can best serve, providing foods that are culturally relevant, providing good, nutritious, healthy food, and then providing an atmosphere where community can come in and share what they know in cooking classes and cooking clubs. Next slide, please. Just another slide of food access. So food access, again, we do direct access here. Last year, our last fiscal year, we were able to give out 3.3 million meals and serve 30,799 unique families. So we're really doing big numbers, but we try not to focus too much on that and more so on the connections in the community that we're building here. Volunteers are such an integral part of Metro Caring. They make everything work and everything happen. We couldn't do what we do without them. Next slide, please. In our nutrition class, this is a picture of a graduating class from our Cocina Nutrición, which is a nutrition course that is in Spanish and is hosted by one of our community members, Ava, on the far right. Next slide, please. And then our urban agriculture department, which really is providing space for our community to grow and also working on our partnerships. Last year, we were able to give out over 5,000 seedlings, working in collective with other entities, and gleaning happened. We were able to glean, I think, 9,000 pounds, and it was just like a last minute thing that happened. So really moving forward and looking forward to connecting. Next slide, please. And these are some of the tools we have. Again, just look a little more into community activation, development, and food sovereignty. And again, community is at the root of all of these. Like, we cannot do what we do without the input and continuous feedback and support, and also stipends for our community's time when they do participate in things like this. Next slide, please. So yes, from charity to solidarity. So I think click again, yes. So not us and them, we're not serving, for them. We are doing this with them, because really collectively we need to change our entire food system as it looks now. It is not a system that is working. There are too many people who don't have food, and it's not that there isn't enough food, it's just that folks cannot afford what food costs right now, nutritious food. So really looking forward to talking with you all the rest of this time, and thank you so much for your time. Next slide has my contact information, but you will receive that. So thank you for your time.
Wow, you guys have a lot going on. Let's see, we're going to get into the good stuff now. We're going to have like a facilitated discussion. I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Roberts. So while we're having this discussion, if you do have additional questions for our panelists, please feel free to put them in the chat. And if we're not able to get to them today, we'll send them out to the respective panelists and send answers back out to everybody. So I'll turn it over to Sarah.
Awesome. So I'm Sarah. I work with the University of Colorado Cancer Center, and I'm also a co-chair of the Colorectal Cancer Task Force with the Colorado Cancer Coalition. And yeah, just to echo what Ian said, this is incredible. And it was so great to hear just the kind of the intros. And again, I think we're just skimming the surface from each of you. So I'm going to get into some questions and we'll get to have a discussion with everybody. And thank you for being here. So the first question is, how do you define food access and what does it look like in your organization? I think Wendy and Doug will have you guys kind of tag team answering first, if you want to highlight that and obviously talk about it from whatever lens you would like to. But if there's a food justice lens, you want to add that as well.
Yeah, so I'd like to talk first about my lived experience. I grew up in Montbello in the 70s. And for all of Montbello, there was one grocery store. Even now, there's only one grocery store in Montbello for 36,000 people. And for a family of 6, my mom was not interested in going to that grocery store where the lines were exceptionally long. The quality of food was exceptionally bad. She was not interested in doing that once a week. So for 6 people, she shopped once a month, which you could imagine by the month, what you're buying is boxes and cans. So it's no surprise that people who grew up with me now in their 50s are suffering from cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and things like that, right? So I did not know that was normal until I moved to Aurora. I live in Buckley. And when I moved there 20 years ago, there were 5 grocery stores within 1 mile. Even now, a luxury. So basically my backyard is King Soopers, and we have titled that the pantry, and we go there every day because that's a luxury to me that I did not have growing up. So when we look at food access, that's really what I'm looking at, right? It's the low access to food that's been associated with all of these increased risk of diseases, and that the geographic location and the cost of food are among the top barriers for Americans to purchase healthy food. So there's a new statistic, that says where you live, i.e. what your zip code is a bigger factor in your health and your quality and length of life than even your DNA. In various cities across America, average life expectancies in certain communities are 20 to 30 years shorter than those who are mere miles away. So when I compare even like Highlands Ranch to Montbello, there's no way that a Highlands Ranch would only have one grocery store. Why is that? And so the work that we do addresses those root causes as to why people in a country of plenty, there is not a scarcity of food, there's an overabundance of food. So why are people hungry? So the work that we do seeks to address those root causes. Thank you.
Yeah, I can add to that. When we look at the neighborhood that I live in right now, which is on the west side of town, and the building, as we know, I live in a project-based housing, and one has to be either 65 years of age or older and or live with a disability. Well, by those 2 definitions, and by that definition alone, we already are very clear that there's going to be some challenges. Getting to the grocery store is a challenge, and the nearest King Soopers to us is, I think, 1 to 2 miles away, depending on where you're at in the building, kind of thing, it feels like. But it can feel like it's 20 miles away when one has to get on a bus, and the buses don't always run because they stop at 7 p.m. at night. And that doesn't include you have to take several buses, and you gotta get to the grocery store, and hopefully all those frozen things you buy don't thaw in the time that you get home, because now you're worried about food safety, or dang it, I don't get ice cream, which was a luxury that I don't get, and I saved all my money for it. And I even bought the very special thermal bag, and I still don't get my ice cream because I have to take 3 buses to get home. And that's on a good day. That's not including when it snows or any of those things. So a lot of my neighbors who are seniors and have health challenges already, getting to food before we even get the opportunity to talk about access to culturally appropriate or health appropriate is a challenge and an issue. So we've addressed that in a couple ways. One, by having the garden on the grounds, producing food for our neighbors. And that's an amazing, beautiful thing, but it's not going to also ever reach a capacity that it is sustaining the entire building. There's no way it's going to do that. It's only a very small drop in the bucket, but it is a drop in the bucket that's creating waves and ripples. Because of that garden club, we've been able to partner with folks like Go Farm, who come in now twice or every other week right now with farm fresh goodies that are also eligible for SNAP and double up dollars. And I'm not sure if WIC is accepted, but I'll definitely talk to them about that, because that's definitely something that should be, if it can be. Having that resource at the front door, which is literally maybe 500 feet from the front door, is a lot better truck, a lot more doable and realistic when dealing with health concerns. And a lot of my neighbors do have cancer and other things that they're fighting. So fighting chemo requires that healthy nutrition. If you can't get that nutrition, you can't fight and the cancers, you can't fight the poisons that we're putting in our body to kill those cancers. And although they're the, I'll say, quote unquote, good poisons we're putting in, it's still a poison that our body is fighting. So that is access and what that looks like here. And so how do we address that? And I will stop there and let our next person let us know what they're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much for your response. Namba, I'm going to turn it over to you and see what your definition or your organization's definition for food access is, how that looks specific to your organization, and if you want to frame it from a lack of food access or to, discuss that as well, that'd be great.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. Yes, just want to piggyback off of what Wendy and Doug were speaking on, is access being intentional, right? So we've been calling it food desert, but the really correct term is food apartheid, and that the neighborhood's access or having grocery stores is very intentional. So I actually also grew up in Montbello, and so I am definitely aware of what Wendy is speaking on, of not there not being a grocery store accessible, and that the assumption that you have transportation to go elsewhere. And I think that there are a lot of assumptions that come into place. I remember learning that grocery stores decide where to build. First, they need the amount of square footage that fits their bottom line so they can make their money. They also don't look at the neighborhood's income level. They look at education level, which I find very interesting. So that would explain why you don't see grocery stores in particular neighborhoods, because right now the median income in Montbello is not low, it's very good. It's like above middle class. So it doesn't make any sense, but it's very intentional. The same with the tree canopy. As we said, we look in the neighborhoods where there are less people of color, there are mature trees, and there are grocery stores all over the place. So definitely wanting to get away from that and approaching food sovereignty, which is, I will read the definition to you all. The right of peoples to healthy and culturally appropriate food produced through ecologically sound and sustainable methods, and their right to define food and agricultural systems. So we need to look at every level, right, of how food is being grown, produced, distributed, and then also what kinds of foods. So as Wendy mentioned, like, right now, if you go to grocery stores, your typical grocery store, a lot of people can't find the foods that they would find at home. And we are a city that's so blessed with such diversity and culture that we should have access to these different kinds of foods. And so the approach looks like land acquisition. It looks like making sure that there is always going to be adequate space. It looks like making sure farmers are getting a livable wage to be able to continue to produce, and that even grocery stores and institutions are purchasing locally as much as possible to help bolster the system that is here. And then nutrition, of course, being a part of that. So if we're looking at cancer and prevention, then we got to look at food access from childhood on, so all the building blocks for disease and illness, that all comes from not being able to access healthy food. So here at Metro Caring specifically, that's why we have all these different teams, because it isn't just giving people food every day. That's, first of all, not sustainable. We know that people are becoming more aware of food waste, and so even donations have decreased significantly, and so it's affecting many organizations. So how do we build a system, look at our food system as it exists, where folks can access the things that they need, and that it's nutritious, and that there are other opportunities for wealth building, for other opportunities, so people have the means to buy what they want to in the grocery store and not feel like they only have this limited amount of budget. And it's interesting, SNAP being called supplemental, because most folks, and this is one of our community members who said this, it is their budget. It is the food budget. It is not supplemental. It is the only food budget. And so looking at how SNAP dollars are being moved in the city and what ways could we be innovative in how we are making those dollars spread more to increase access to more folks. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That's awesome. I really appreciate your thoughtfulness in that. And yeah, thank you. Brandy, is there anything that you would like to add to that? Again, I'll read the question. How do you or your organization define food access, and what does it look like specific to your organization?
Yeah, thank you. So yes, I have stuff to add to that too. So we provide meals for anyone who has any kind of severe illness. And one of the things that we had originally looked at was who has access to food. And I think that there's a common misconception between access to food and access to nutritious, medically appropriate food. And so I just want to touch on that a little bit. We'll often get individuals that are calling or interested in receiving services, but then they talk about how they have access to food, but come to find out it's like crackers and peanut butter and things like that. So making sure that people really understand properly medically tailored nutritious meals are what's important to make you feel healthier, make you heal easier. And there's a lot of proof out there when it comes to medical diagnoses. Clearly, we all know that if you eat healthy, you feel better, but trying to actually get people to understand that that really plays a definite role for people that have open wounds and healing. You have to have a certain amount of protein and appropriate protein. And so we really like to focus on not necessarily food access, but appropriate food. And not only that, we also look at other things. So even individuals who have the financial means to purchase meals, they may be too fatigued if they're dealing with illness. They may be overworked. They may have, you were talking about 6 kids earlier. So they may have too many children and they're running in too many different directions. And so they don't necessarily have the time to provide those nutritious, appropriately meals. So we do medically tailor all our meals and provide those culturally appropriate, medically tailored meals. And we really do focus on making sure that individuals understand that it's not just food, it's proper nutrition and having access to that. I also, just on a quick note, grew up in a food desert myself. The nearest grocery store from where my dad lives currently is still an hour away, so each way. And so, yes, I totally understand and can see that from your aspect as well. And I'll stop there.
Thank you, Brandy. And yeah, each of you touched on obviously the importance of food access, but something very important, which is nutrition and the quality of the food that you're getting. And I think each organization that's been highlighted has done an awesome job in supporting the sustainability for that for each person. You know, the education piece for people is huge. So thank you. Again, each of you kind of touched on this in your intro, but what are you doing, or what is your organization doing to support people who are most harmed by the food system? What does that look like in practice and in action? And we'll just start again with Wendy and Doug, if you would like to answer that one first.
Yeah, I can start us off. That's okay, Wendy? Excellent. So in the West Colfax area specifically, we are bringing in and partnering with folks like Go Farm, who is a nonprofit here in the area. I believe they're located in Golden and specifically, but they work with Colorado farmers and bring in those farm fresh goodies to the building, which does make, it addresses 2 of our biggest challenges when we're talking about access here specifically. 1, it's bringing the food to the front door, which is super helpful. And 2, it is a healthier type of food. And it's honestly just the first step to many that need to be taken to continue to support. And this is definitely part of my personal vision, at least here, is continuing to work with my neighbors and specifically the Garden Club, because it is the Garden Club that really fostered bringing in Go Farm. And also when we did receive grant dollars, we took some of those dollars and specifically bought food from Go Farm and ask them to distribute that to the community, because there's plenty of folks that come to the truck like, what is this cool, beautifully painted truck? And it's a beautifully painted truck. But then when you get to the truck and you find out that a dozen of eggs is $5, even though those are great eggs because they've been grown organically, healthy, the chickens have been loved, and all these wonderful, really important things. And it does make the quality of those eggs potentially better than our factory awful version that is like 60 cents. However, again, back to, if I have to choose to live on my $16 in supplemental dollars is what I get. So I totally thank you, Naomi, for bringing that up. Like, it's not supplemental if it's so little or the only budget, but $5 wipes out a third of my SNAP budget. So those decisions have to be made. So how do we continue to move forward? There are pieces to that. I know I've kind of went on a squirrel tangent again, so let me make sure I crossed all the major branches I wanted to. Pretty sure I'll hand it over to Wendy.
You did an amazing job. Thank you, Doug. So what are we doing? First of all, we are community-led. We don't want to bring harm. And sometimes you can, as much of an advocate or an ally as you want to be, you can bring harm to a community just heading out in your own direction and not asking them what they need. So, and Naomi touched on that. She really honed in on that. We are community-led. We support networks of people who are already doing the work in the community. So we are funding projects that are already going in organizations. We fund pilot projects like the Veggie Van and urban agriculture. I'll give you some specifics on some organizations. Rocky Mountain Welcome Center, they're an immigrant-led not-for-profit organization with the mission of fostering intercultural learning, understanding, and integration among immigrants, refugees, and Colorado communities that are receiving. So they are quite busy right now with our new Afghan refugee friends. And so we have funded them. We've also funded El Alba Catering Cooperative. It's a business cooperative owned and operated by immigrant and refugee entrepreneurs, because of course we know that economical freedom helps with food access. They offer a commercial kitchen space and culturally competent business support for residents who want to open and operate food-based businesses. And then I'll mention, I have two more, sorry. Kaizen Food Rescue that aims to prevent food waste, improve food justice, and health equity in Denver. And finally, Village Farms. They're working to reduce food insecurity. The farm grows organic produce that is culturally relevant, and we talked about how important that is, to people in the area of East Colfax. They create also a space for youth and adult learning on how to begin your own garden and make it productive. And it bridges the communities in a welcoming outdoor space. So that's some of the projects that we fund and that we support.
Awesome, thank you. And what a perfect demonstration of the collaboration that goes into this kind of work. So thank you, I appreciate that. Nyamba, did you want to answer that as well?
Sure, yeah, sure.
I can repeat the question if you want me to. So the question is, what is your organization doing to support people who are most harmed by the food system, and what does it look like in practice and in action?
For sure, thank you. I would say first, I want to just talk back about our equity audit that we've been doing internally. So that is really getting to some of the helping us all identify the biases that we may carry and how that can show up in just our interaction with people. And so looking at how we are with each other as a staff to start, and where we are on the inclusivity, diversity lens, and then how what steps can we take to improve. So we all have plans specifically tailored for us, that for us to do small activities and just different things to get better, because there's always room for improvement as we navigate people, which is really what this life is about. I'll speak also to some of those teams I mentioned and kind of had to rush through those slides. So we have our community development team, who's working really hard to connect community members to resources internally and externally. As I mentioned, again, economic justice, building sustainable sources of income and reducing the wealth gap, generating opportunities for neighborhood entrepreneurship and community and cooperative ownership structures of assets. creates more inclusion, community wealth, and shared ownership within current operating structures. And strengthening local economic structures and access as a counterbalance to outsized corporate influence in the economy. So just helping people start small businesses and gain support in those small businesses. As well, just making community a better place to live and work and play until and after systemic, and policy equity are achieved. So that at the end of it, that's really where we're at, is wanting to give community all kinds of opportunities and the ones that they speak for, that they say that they would like to have, and just offering the resources that Metro Caring has been able to acquire over time. Our community activation team, as I mentioned, working on civic engagement, so mobilizing community members to vote in elections and participate in the small d and capital D democratic processes, education, agitation, mobilizing, organizing, and activating each other. We had a training that happened, training folks on how to share their story effectively in front of Congress. And so just it's very important to give people the tools and opportunity that they ask for to be able to better represent their community. So we're not speaking for anyone. So again, policy, legislation, and then some rapid response things as well, and using the tension that exists in community to have something productive happen from that. And then again, food sovereignty, our team, direct access is every day on the ground downstairs right now. We have our fresh food market back open, which is so wonderful. We provide delivery services, understanding that with COVID, it came about because of COVID, but then that this is something we want to keep going because people need it. Excuse me, not everyone, as Doug mentioned, has transportation. And so getting food delivered to you is so important. And being able to choose and stay with dietary restrictions that you have. We're always trying to be better. And then our urban agriculture department, so we have this hydro farm on our list of things that we have activated, which is really reducing, it's sustainable and it's reducing water and it's provided educational opportunities. And also one of our community members is starting a business using our hydro farm. So we're just trying to approach it from many different angles and utilizing the time that Metro Caring has been around to provide resources for our community to activate themselves, really.
Awesome. It is very, very impressive what Metro Caring and each of these organizations are doing to address this at a systemic level. Okay, with the few minutes that we have left, I just want to present a question, and Brandy, we'll start with you. Just what is one call to action that you could give to the attendees of this webinar?
So I guess my call to action would be in terms of the medical field. So I think a lot of times we are very proactive, very reactive instead of proactive. And so I would like to address food insecurity before it becomes a problem. So before somebody is malnourished, before they start showing those signs of healing slower, things like that. Referrals to organizations like the ones that presented today should happen early in people's diagnosis or early. It should be addressed in every appointment, actually, but taking the time to understand if individuals have access to medically appropriate nutritious food, and it needs to be framed in medically nutritious food. And then making those referrals. I think a lot of times what we're seeing it so far on the other end, and providing more advocacy to get more time for the doctors to be able to do that, or social workers or nurses. A lot of the feedback that we get from the medical community is they have 7 minutes per patient. And so food insecurity might come up, but then they're just asking the question and they're moving on. They don't have time to sit there and provide resources. They can refer them to a social worker. They might get an appointment in a week, and then maybe the social worker can get something set up, but then they're still going weeks without, and that's after they're diagnosed with malnutrition. So I would really just encourage everyone to advocate for yourselves and advocate for others of addressing food insecurity and making it more normalized. It's something that everybody should be able to talk about, and without shame or without fear of, not having the support that they need.
Great, thank you. Wendy and Doug, would you like to present your call to action as well?
Absolutely. I'm going to say show up invite and show up people to the table. I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of those squirrel moments again. And what I'm getting at here is don't make decisions about me without me. You have no clue what I need. Plain and simple. You may know something about spina bifida. You may know something about being Latino, Hispanic, person who's blind, Black, name it. But I don't know what you need for you to be you, and you don't know what I need to be me. So let's have dinner. Let's break bread together. Let's have conversation, find those common grounds, because there's common grounds. We all need water. We all need food. We all need shelter. Those are the basics. Those are the have to haves. We don't have to make those difficult. We do because of the isms, capitalism, racism, ableism, sexism, ageism, pickenism. You got it. And it's all tearing it down. So let's have dinner together. Let's bring people that when we're talking about, we're going to go help pick a group. That's awesome. Is that group at the table? Are the community leaders at the table from the get-go, having dinner with you, going, oh my God, that's really nasty. Let's work on that. Let's create better appetizers kind of thing. Like, it's important to have people at the table from the beginning so we know what is appropriate. We do know what's culturally appropriate. We do know those things. So again, have dinner, invite people to the table, have the conversations of what I would say.
Awesome. Thank you. Wendy, do you have anything to add to that?
Doug is so amazing. It's hard to follow him. In fact, I'm not going to follow you anymore, Doug. But thanks, Doug, so much. I put my contact information in the chat. So if you have an organization or you know of an organization who could benefit from our support, please pass the word along. We spoke about the root causes of why someone in this land of plenty and abundance could be hungry. And yes, sometimes those people are unhoused, but often here in Colorado, those are working individuals, people who every 2 weeks have to make the hard decision of paying rent, daycare, or even their health needs, maybe cancer, right? And sometimes it's what's left, if there's anything, that goes to food. So personally, this is a personal call to action. I would encourage each of you to become that ally, that advocate, to break down the systemic oppressions in all of its forms and usher in equity that will include food. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Nambe, your final and last call to action.
I would like to kind of echo what Doug said and actually invite you to Metro Caring if possible, and give you a tour and have you meet folks and sit down and talk about what resources do we all have, what gaps exist, and so how can we start to really tie things together to where we're better able to serve our community and improve the health outcomes of our community. So yeah, I put my contact information in the chat also, and I look forward to hearing from folks. And good to see some people I do know.
Thank you. I know Ian has put the evaluation link in the chat along with everyone's contact information. I know we only have about a minute left, but just wanted to thank everybody, especially our panelists, for an awesome discussion and an awesome overview of what we can do for food access in the urban setting here. Ian, did you have anything to add or close with?
No, I just want to say a huge thank you to Nyambe, Wendy, Doug, and Brandy for sharing with us their experiences and expertise in food access. And we will be planning the next webinar and look forward to seeing you all at that one, which will focus on either food access in a rural setting or built environment. Thank you all.